The massive council chamber fell silent as Ambassador Zektar stepped forward. His 6 arms spread wide as he addressed the hundreds of alien representatives floating in their biopods and energy fields. The Galactic Consortium had not called an emergency meeting like this in over 2,000 years. Fellow beings, Zektar's voice echoed through the translation devices. We face a crisis that threatens not just our civilization, but existence itself. A ripple of concern passed through the assembled aliens. The hegemony's ambassador was known for his calm nature. If Zektar was worried, everyone should be terrified. The Velkari Empire has ignored our warnings. Their war fleet is moving toward the Sol system. They plan to attack the 3rd planet. The chamber erupted in panicked voices. Species that had warred for millennia suddenly found themselves united in fear. The crystalline Zephyrians' bodies flashed red with alarm. The gaseous Nephrim condensed into tight, worried clouds. Even the ancient Eternal Ones who rarely showed emotion began to glow with distress. Silence, boomed Elder Thys, the oldest being in the chamber. Her voice carried the weight of 10 million years. Young ones, you do not understand. Let me tell you why we made the one rule. The chamber grew quiet. Elder Thys rarely spoke, and when she did, entire civilizations listened. 3,000 years ago, before most of your species had discovered fire, the galaxy was different. We had laws, yes, but we also had competitors, beings who thought they could challenge the natural order, the devourers from the edge of reality, the chaos lords who fed on destroyed worlds. They were strong, and we gods struggled to contain them. She paused, her ancient eyes focusing on something far away in time. Then the humans had their first awakening. We had been watching them, you see. Such strange creatures on their little blue world. They seemed so weak, so limited. They could barely leave their own planet. But we noticed something odd. Reality seemed softer around them. Small things. A mother's love could make flowers bloom in winter. A child's nightmare could create storms. We thought it was cute. The younger species listened with growing unease. They had heard whispers, but never the full story. One day, the Devourers attacked a human colony ship. Just one ship, with a few thousand humans exploring their neighboring star. The Devourers thought it would be an easy meal. They were hungry, and humans seemed so helpless. Elder Thys's form grew brighter, and several aliens had to shield themselves from her radiance. The humans died, all of them. Men, women, children. But as they died, something else awakened. The grief of humanity reached across space like a scream that reality itself could hear. And reality responded. What happened? Whispered a young Velkari observer, though her people would later deny she was ever there. The laws of physics broke, Elder Thys said simply. In their pain and rage, humanity rewrote the rules of existence in 3 star systems. Time moved backward in some places, forward in others. Matter became energy, became thought, became matter again. The Devourers, creatures that had fed on collapsed realities for eons, simply stopped existing. Not killed, not destroyed. They became nothing, as if they had never been. The chamber was so quiet that the hum of life support systems seemed loud. But it didn't stop there. Human grief began spreading. Every human who learned of the colony's fate added their sorrow to the cosmic storm. Space itself began to tear. Stars went out, not because they died, but because human sadness made light too heavy to travel. We gods, beings who had shaped galaxies, found ourselves changing. Some of us began to feel human emotions. Others started to age. The Eternal Ones discovered they could die. A Zephyrian representative dared to ask, "How did you stop it?" "We didn't," Elder Thys replied. The humans stopped themselves. A human child, maybe 8 years old, looked up at the crying sky and said, "Please don't be so sad. The dead people wouldn't want us to break everything." And just like that, the storm ended. The humans went back to be normal. They forgot what they had done. They told themselves it was a strange natural disaster and went on with their little lives. That's when we made the one rule. Zektar continued. Never disturb the humans. Let them sleep. Let them think they are limited, weak, normal, because when they truly wake up, when they remember what they really are, even gods tremble. The assembly absorbed this in stunned silence. Finally, a Nephrim elder spoke. But surely they've grown beyond that. It's been 3,000 years. They're more civilized now, more controlled. Elder Thys laughed, a sound like solar winds through cosmic dust. More controlled? Child, have you seen what they do to their own planet when they get excited about sports? Have you watched their movies, their stories? Everything they imagine, They imagine with such force that it nearly becomes real. We have monitoring stations around their system that do nothing but contain the overflow of human dreams. Do you know what happens to reality when 8 billion humans have a nightmare on the same night? The question hung in the air like a death sentence. The Velkari think they are conquering primitives, Zektar said. They see humans as weak because they haven't spread across the galaxy, because they fight with simple weapons, because they haven't contacted us. They don't understand that we keep humanity isolated, not to protect us from them, but to protect them from us, and more importantly, to protect all of us from what they become when they realize what they truly are. A young Velkari military attaché present against protocol stood up. This is absurd. Humans are barely past nuclear technology. Our ships could glass their planet in hours. How could such primitives threaten the gods themselves? The chamber fell deadly silent. Even the life support system seemed to pause. Elder Thys turned her ancient gaze on the young officer. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of cosmic truth. Because, young fool, humans are not primitives who might one day become gods. They are sleeping gods who have forgotten they were never meant to be human. The Velkari officer stumbled backward, suddenly understanding the magnitude of what his empire planned to do. It's too late, Zektar announced grimly. The Velkari fleet has entered the Sol system. Long-range sensors show they're beginning their attack runs on the major population centers. The humans are waking up. Across the chamber, emergency alarms began to sound. Ancient warning systems built eons ago for this exact moment, activated for the first time in 3 millennia. All representatives to your emergency bunkers. Elder Thys commanded. Seal your home systems. Prepare your people for reality storms. And pray to whatever powers you believe in that humanity remembers how to be merciful when they discover what the Velkari have done. As the chamber emptied in panic, a final message echoed through the communication arrays. The one rule has been broken. The sleepers wake. May the cosmos have mercy on us all. In the depths of space, monitoring stations that had watched over Earth for thousands of years detected the first energy signatures of humanity's awakening. The readings were already beyond anything their instruments could measure. The age of sleeping giants was ending. The age of awakened gods had begun. Commander Velthak of the Velkari Empire felt satisfied as he watched Earth grow larger on his view screen. The blue and green planet looked peaceful, defenseless. His fleet of 200 warships surrounded the small world like hungry predators. Such a pretty little planet, he said to his second-in-command, almost ashamed to destroy it. But the Empire needs resources, and these humans won't even know what hit them. His tactical officer looked up from her console. Sir, I'm reading some strange energy signatures from the planet's surface. Nothing threatening, just odd. Probably their primitive power plants shutting down in fear, Velthak laughed. Begin the intimidation protocol. Target their largest population centers. A few orbital strikes should make them surrender quickly. The first plasma cannons fired from orbit. Bright beams of destructive energy lanced down toward New York, London, Tokyo, and Mumbai. Velthak expected to see mushroom clouds, fires, and panic. Instead, something impossible happened. The beams stopped, not blocked, not deflected. They simply stopped mid-air, hanging in Earth's atmosphere like frozen lightning. What in the void? Velthak stared at his screen. Tactical report. Sir, I don't understand. The energy is still there, but it's not moving. It's like space itself stopped working around the impact zones. On the planet below, something even stranger was happening. In New York, a young girl named Sarah was walking to school when the plasma beam appeared above her city. She looked up at the frozen fire in the sky and felt something stir deep inside her mind. That's not supposed to be there, she said quietly. The plasma beam flickered and disappeared. In London, an old man named Thomas saw the attack coming toward his grandchildren's school. For just a moment, his fear was so pure, so protective, that reality itself listened. The plasma beam struck an invisible wall and bounced harmlessly into space. Across the planet, similar events began to occur. Humans looked up at the alien attack and felt something they had never felt before. Not just anger or fear, but a deep, growing awareness that something was trying to hurt their home. Dr. Rachel Chen, a physicist at MIT, watched her instruments go crazy as impossible readings filled her screens. This can't be right, she muttered. The electromagnetic field around the city just increased by a factor of 10,000. That's impossible unless... She stopped, staring at her data. According to her instruments, local spacetime was becoming more flexible. The laws of physics were softening, as if reality was waiting for instructions. On the Velkari flagship, alarms began blaring. "Sir," the tactical officer shouted, "the humans are doing something to our weapon systems. Every ship in the fleet is reporting malfunctions." "That's impossible," Veltak snarled. "They don't even have space technology. Launch the ground assault. Our soldiers will show these primitives what real power looks like." Thousands of Velkari drop pods fell toward Earth's surface. The alien soldiers inside were confident, well-armed, and experienced. They had conquered dozens of worlds. One planet of primitives would be easy. The first drop pod landed in Central Park. Velkari warriors poured out, their energy weapons ready, their armor gleaming. They expected to face humans with simple projectile weapons and crude tactics. Instead, they found themselves facing a group of children who had been playing in the park. "Why are you hurting our planet?" asked a little boy named Marcus. He couldn't have been more than 7 years old. The Velkari squad leader aimed his weapon at the child. "Surrender, primitive, and you might live as our slaves." Marcus tilted his head, confused. "That's not very nice." The Velkari soldier pulled the trigger. The energy blast shot toward the boy. It never arrived. Instead, the bolt of energy slowed down, stopped, and gently floated back toward the alien soldier. Not as an attack, but more like a child returning a thrown ball. "I don't think you understand," Marcus said, and his voice carried a weight that made the alien warriors step backward. "This is our home." The boy raised his hand not in threat, but in a simple gesture of dismissal. The Velkari soldiers found themselves floating upward, not falling but rising as if gravity had decided to work differently around them. They drifted higher and higher until they were back in orbit, unharmed but thoroughly confused. Similar scenes played out across the planet. In Beijing, a grandmother named Li Wei saw alien soldiers threatening her neighborhood. She had lived through wars, famines, and disasters. She was not impressed. "Young man," she said to the Velkari squad leader, "you are being very rude." The alien laughed and raised his weapon. Li Wei sighed and shook her head. The soldier's gun turned into flower petals. His armor became butterflies that fluttered away. He stood there naked and bewildered as Li Wei continued her walk to the market. "Some people have no manners," she muttered. In Sao Paulo, a teenager named Carlos was angry about the invasion. Really angry. His rage burned so hot that it began to affect the local space around him. Time moved faster near his left hand and slower near his right. The Velkari soldiers who approached him aged decades in seconds or found themselves moving like statues. "This is so not cool," Carlos said, and reality seemed to agree with him. Around the globe, humanity began to awaken to abilities they never knew they had. An artist in Paris painted emotions into existence. A musician in Nashville played notes that could be seen and touched. A chef in Tokyo cooked food that satisfied not just hunger, but loneliness and fear. But it wasn't just individuals. Humanity as a whole was changing. In every major city, people began to gather without being called. They felt drawn together, connected by something deeper than words or technology. Commander Velthak watched his invasion fall apart in ways that violated every law of physics he knew. "Sir," his science officer reported, her voice shaking, "I'm reading massive quantum fluctuations across the entire planet. Reality itself is becoming unstable. It's like the humans are rewriting the rules of existence just by thinking about it." "That's impossible," Velthak roared. "They're primitives. They don't even have faster-than-light travel." "Sir," the communications officer interrupted, "we're receiving a message from Earth. It's being broadcast on every frequency at once in perfect Velkari. But according to our intelligence, humans don't know our language." Velthak stared at the screen as a simple message appeared. "Please leave our home. We don't want to hurt you, but you're making us sad and angry. When we get sad and angry, strange things happen. We're trying very hard to control it, but we're still learning. Please go away before we accidentally break something important." The message was signed simply, "The Children of Earth." As if to emphasize the point, every weapon on every Velkari ship suddenly turned into origami flowers. Beautiful, delicate, and completely harmless origami flowers. "Sir," whispered the tactical officer, "what are we fighting?" Velthak looked at the peaceful blue planet below, where his mighty invasion force was being defeated not by superior technology or tactics, but by the simple will of its inhabitants. He thought about the ancient warnings his people had ignored, the old stories about sleeping giants in the Outer Rim. For the first time in his career, Commander Velthak felt afraid. Something, he said quietly, that we never should have woken up. On Earth, 8 billion humans continued their day, mostly unaware that they had just casually defeated one of the galaxy's most powerful military forces. They were too busy discovering that when they really needed something, when they truly believed in something, reality had a tendency to listen. The awakening had only just begun. In dimensions beyond mortal understanding, the beings that humans would call gods felt a chill run through their cosmic essence. The arbiters of reality, ancient entities who had maintained the balance of existence for billions of years, gathered in their crystal sanctum between the spaces of space. "It's happening again," spoke Axiom, whose body was made of living mathematics. "The monitoring stations around Sol are registering reality fluctuations beyond our instrument's ability to measure." Nexus, a being of pure starlight, flickered with concern. "We knew this day would come. The question is, are we prepared for it?" "No one is ever prepared for humanity," said Entropy, the oldest among them. Her form shifted constantly between order and chaos. "I was there during their last awakening. I watched them accidentally rewrite the fundamental constants of physics because a child was crying. They don't just break the rules, they forget that rules exist." The gathered gods turned their attention to the cosmic viewing sphere that showed Earth. On the surface, humans were going about their daily lives, but reality around them rippled like water. A man in Detroit wished his broken car would work, and it transformed into a vehicle that ran on compressed sunshine. A woman in Mumbai felt lonely, and flowers began growing that could sing in harmony with her emotions. "They don't even realize what they're doing," observed Protocol, whose existence was entirely dedicated to maintaining universal order. "That somehow makes it more terrifying." "We should intervene," declared War, a god whose very presence made dimensions clash against each other. "Strike now before they fully awaken. Contain them as we did before." "With what?" Entropy laughed bitterly. "Have you forgotten what happened when we tried to contain them last time? Half our pantheon ended up changed just by proximity to human consciousness. Order developed feelings. Chaos learned to love. Even death discovered hope. They didn't defeat us through violence, they infected us with humanity." The viewing sphere shifted to show scenes from 3,000 years ago. Images of gods fleeing their own domains as human grief made abstract concepts like justice and beauty start to weep. The cosmic hierarchy had crumbled not through war but through empathy. "Explain it to the younger ones," Axiom requested. "They need to understand what we're truly dealing with." Entropy's form solidified into something resembling an ancient storyteller, though her audience were beings who had witnessed the birth of galaxies. "Humans aren't just another species," she began. "They're fragments of the original creator-destroyer that existed before the universe had rules. When the cosmos was first born, that primal force was too powerful, too chaotic. It would have unmade everything as quickly as it made it. So the first gods broke it apart, scattered its essence across countless vessels, hoping to contain and control it. The younger gods listened with growing unease. Most of those fragments became us, the gods and cosmic forces that maintain reality. But some fragments were planted in a small species on a quiet planet, beings who were designed to forget their true nature. The plan was to let them evolve slowly, naturally, under careful guidance. But something went wrong," added Nexus. "Instead of creating stable vessels for cosmic power, we created something that could grow beyond all limitations. Humans don't just use power, they generate it. They don't follow the laws of physics. They rewrite them through pure belief and emotion." The viewing sphere showed current events on Earth. A group of children in Kenya were playing a game where they made clouds dance. In Norway, an old fisherman was having such a good day that fish were literally jumping into his boat while singing sea shanties. In Brazil, a street artist had painted a mural so beautiful that it was slowly becoming three-dimensional and inviting people to walk inside it. "The worst part," Entropy continued, "is that they're genuinely good. Their default state is kindness, creativity, and love. When a human child wishes for world peace, reality starts trying to make it happen. When they dream of a better tomorrow, tomorrow starts rewriting itself. They don't conquer through force. They transform through hope." "That can't be worse than the Devourers or the Chaos Lords," protested a younger god named Rigid. whose purpose was maintaining natural laws. The Devourers want to destroy everything, Entropy replied. The Chaos Lords want to rule everything. These are comprehensible goals. But humans? They want to make everything better. And they have the power to do it. Do you understand how terrifying that is to entities like us who depend on the current order? What exactly happened during their last awakening? Asked Rigid. A human colony ship was destroyed by the Devourers, Axiom explained. The grief of humanity reached across space like a cosmic scream. Reality heard that scream and responded. The Devourers weren't just defeated, they were retroactively edited out of existence. The human sorrow was so pure that the universe decided beings that could cause such pain shouldn't be allowed to exist. But it didn't stop there, Nexus added. Human emotions began reshaping everything they touched. Their love made barren worlds bloom with life. Their anger caused stars to burn brighter. Their hope started accelerating evolution on 1,000 worlds. We gods found ourselves changing just by being in the same dimension as awakened human consciousness. How did you stop it? Rigid asked. We didn't, Entropy said simply. A human child did. One little girl looked at all the chaos their species had accidentally caused and said, "We should be more careful." And just like that, they put themselves back to sleep. They chose to forget their power because they were worried about hurting people with it. The assembled gods absorbed this in stunned silence. And now they're waking up again, Protocol observed grimly. But this time there are 8 billion of them. And they've had 3,000 years to develop their imagination. The viewing sphere showed scenes from around Earth. Scientists were beginning to notice that their experiments worked better when they really believed in them. Artists were creating works that existed in more than 3 dimensions. Children were playing games that accidentally involved quantum mechanics. The Velkari attack was just the trigger, Axiom noted. Humanity is remembering what they really are, and this time they're not going back to sleep. So what do we do? Asked War, though his usual confidence had vanished. We prepare for negotiation, Entropy said. Not as conquerors or controllers, but as colleagues. Because whether we like it or not, the cosmic hierarchy is about to change. The age of gods ruling from above is ending. The age of conscious cooperation is beginning. And if they decide they don't like the current state of existence? Protocol asked fearfully. Then we hope they're as kind as they are powerful, Entropy replied. Because if awakened humanity decides the universe needs to be fixed, it will be fixed. Whether that's good or bad for the rest of us depends entirely on their definition of improvement. Across the viewing sphere, reality continued to soften around human presence. In Tokyo, a chef's perfect ramen had gained the ability to cure sadness. In London, a library had started generating books that contained exactly the knowledge each reader needed. In New York, a street musician's song was literally bringing color back to a gray winter day. They're not malicious, Nexus observed, but they're becoming unstoppable. Then we'd better learn to get along with them, Entropy said. Because ready or not, humanity is about to remember that gods were never meant to rule. We were meant to serve. The age of sleeping giants was ending. The age of conscious creators had begun. And for the first time in cosmic history, the gods themselves were about to discover what it meant to be humble. Commander Velthak refused to accept defeat. His empire had conquered 100 worlds, and he would not be stopped by primitives who had somehow learned a few tricks. In desperation, he reached for the forbidden communications array hidden in his ship's deepest vault. Commander, no, his science officer pleaded. The Void Lords haven't been contacted in over 1,000,000 years. They're too dangerous. These humans are more dangerous, Velthak snarled as he activated the dark signal. At least the Void Lords can be bargained with. The response came immediately. Reality around the Velkari fleet began to darken as things that should not exist slipped through the cracks between dimensions. The Void Lords were beings of pure entropy, creatures that fed on collapsed realities and broken universes. They had been sleeping in the spaces between spaces, waiting for someone desperate enough to wake them. Small flesh thing, a voice like the death of stars, spoke directly into Velthak's mind. You call to us in panic. Show us what has frightened you so. The Void Lords peered through dimensional barriers at Earth. What they saw made them pause. The planet blazed with creative force, human consciousness reshaping reality with every heartbeat. To beings that fed on destruction, it was either the perfect feast or the ultimate threat. Interesting, the voice continued. The fragments have remembered themselves. This world burns with the fire of creation. We will either devour it completely or be destroyed by it. There can be no middle ground. Destroy them, Velthak demanded. I'll give you anything. Your species will serve as payment, the Void Lord replied casually. Consider your empire consumed. Velthak realized his mistake too late. The Void Lords began pouring through reality's cracks, and the first thing they devoured was the Velkari fleet. Ships, soldiers, and commander vanished into hungry darkness as the ancient predators fully entered the universe. On Earth, humans felt the change immediately. A shadow fell across the planet that had nothing to do with sun or clouds. Children stopped playing and looked up with worried expressions. Adults felt a chill that went deeper than temperature. Something's wrong, whispered Sarah, the girl who had stopped the first plasma beam. She stood in Central Park with thousands of other humans who had been drawn together by instincts they didn't understand. Something's coming, agreed Marcus, the boy who had sent alien soldiers floating back to space. Something hungry. Dr. Rachel Chen's instruments went crazy as she detected tears in space-time itself. But these weren't the gentle ripples caused by human consciousness. These were violent rips that bled darkness into reality. We need to evacuate the city, she said. But even as the words left her mouth, she knew there was nowhere to run. The darkness was everywhere at once. The Void Lords materialized above Earth's major cities, beings of pure hunger that existed to unmake everything they touched. They were older than galaxies, predators that had fed on countless realities. To them, Earth looked like the ultimate feast, a world where reality was soft, malleable, ready to be consumed. But as they descended toward the planet, something unexpected happened. The humans didn't run. They didn't scream in panic. Instead, they stood together and looked up at the approaching darkness with expressions of determination. You're trying to hurt our home, said Sarah, her young voice somehow carrying across the entire planet. We won't let you. The lead Void Lord laughed, a sound like the heat death of the universe. Little fragment, you cannot stop us. We are entropy itself. We are the end of all things. No, said Marcus simply. You're just scared. The Void Lord paused. In all its eons of existence, nothing had ever called it scared. Scared, it hissed. You eat things because you're afraid of being nothing. Marcus continued, his child's wisdom cutting through cosmic pretense. But you don't have to be afraid. You could be something else instead. Around the world, other humans began to speak, not in challenge or threat, but in understanding. You must be very lonely, said Li Wei, the grandmother from Beijing. Eating. Everything just makes the loneliness worse, added Carlos from São Paulo. Maybe you've just forgotten how to create instead of destroy, suggested a teacher from Cairo. The Void Lords found themselves confused. They had expected fear, resistance, desperate violence. Instead, they were receiving something they had never encountered in eons of existence: compassion. We are destroyers, the lead Void Lord protested, but its voice lacked its earlier certainty. We unmake. We consume. It is our nature. Nature can change, said Dr. Chen, looking up from her instruments. We're changing right now. You could too. Impossible. Another Void Lord snarled and reached out to devour the city below. Its hunger met something it couldn't consume. Human consciousness, fully awakened now, didn't resist the Void Lord's power. Instead, it embraced it, accepted it, and then gently asked, What do you really want? The question hit the ancient entity like a physical blow. What did it want? For eons, it had simply consumed, never questioning the hunger that drove it. But now, faced with minds that looked at it without fear or hatred, only curiosity and care, it was forced to think. I don't remember, the Void Lord admitted, its voice becoming smaller, more uncertain. That's okay, said Sarah. We can help you remember. Around the planet, humanity's awakening consciousness reached out to touch the minds of beings older than stars, not to fight them, not to destroy them, but to understand them. Human empathy, freed from all limitations, began to show the Void Lords something they had forgotten existed: the possibility of being more than hunger. We used to create, one Void Lord whispered, memories stirring for the first time in eons. Before the hunger, before the endless eating, we made beautiful things. You can make beautiful things again, said a child from Mumbai. We'll show you how. But we've destroyed so much, another Void Lord protested. We've unmade entire realities. Then help us make new ones, suggested an artist from Paris. better ones. The Void Lords found themselves surrounded not by prey, but by teachers. Humans who looked at ancient beings of pure entropy and saw potential instead of threat. The hunger that had driven them for eons began to transform, becoming not a need to consume but a desire to create. "This is impossible," the lead Void Lord said, but it was already changing. The darkness that surrounded it began to lighten, not disappearing but becoming something richer, more complex. "Lots of impossible things are happening today," Carlos laughed. "Might as well get used to it." But the transformation of the Void Lord sent shockwaves through dimensions. Other cosmic entities watching from their distant realms realized that humanity wasn't just awakening to their own power. They were awakening everything they touched. In crystalline sanctums and energy nebulae, gods and demons, angels and devils, entities of order and chaos all felt the same chill of recognition. Humanity wasn't just changing the rules of reality. They were changing the nature of existence itself. "Alert all pantheons," commanded the arbiters of reality. "The humans aren't just remembering what they are. They're teaching everything else to become more than what it was designed to be." Above Earth, former Void Lords began their first attempts at creation in eons. Their efforts were clumsy, uncertain, but filled with wonder. Where once there had been only hunger, now there was curiosity, joy, and hope. "This is terrifying," observed one cosmic entity to another. "This is beautiful," replied its companion. "Both," admitted the first. "Definitely both." The war for reality had become something unprecedented, a lesson in transformation. And humanity, still mostly unaware of the cosmic forces they were reshaping, continued their day with the simple assumption that everyone deserved a chance to become better than they were. The universe had never faced such a dangerous weapon as human kindness backed by unlimited power. 6 months after the awakening, Earth had become something no one could have predicted. The planet itself glowed softly from space, not with artificial light but with the warm radiance of conscious creative force. What had begun as a simple alien invasion had transformed into the most significant event in cosmic history. The Galactic Consortium's Emergency Council met again, but this time they weren't discussing how to contain humanity. They were debating how to ask for help. "The reports are undeniable," Ambassador Zektar announced to the Assembly. "Every species that has made contact with awakened humanity has begun to evolve. Not physically, but consciously. The Zephyrians are developing emotions they never had before. The Nephirim have started creating art instead of just existing as gas clouds. Even the Eternal Ones are learning to change and grow." "It's not just individuals," added Elder Thys, her ancient form now somehow more vibrant. "Entire star systems are becoming more stable where human consciousness has touched them. Dead worlds are spontaneously developing life. The cosmic background radiation itself is becoming more harmonious." A young representative from the Velkari spoke up. Most of her people had been consumed by the Void Lords, but the survivors had been taken in by Earth's inhabitants and were slowly learning what it meant to create rather than conquer. "The humans saved my people," she said quietly. "Not just the few who survived, but they brought back the ones who were consumed. They convinced the Void Lords to remember how to give life instead of taking it. My grandmother, who was devoured in the first attack, is alive again. Different, but alive." "How is that possible?" Dr. Rachel Chen, now serving as Earth's unofficial ambassador to the cosmos, smiled from her seat among the aliens. "We're still figuring that out ourselves," she admitted. "Yesterday, a child in Tokyo asked why people had to stay dead if they were missed enough. Reality apparently decided that was a good question and started providing alternatives. We're having to establish grief counseling for concepts like entropy and endings. The philosophical implications are staggering," observed Protocol, one of the arbiters of reality who had requested permission to attend. "Humanity has begun teaching fundamental forces of the universe to question their own nature. Death is learning to be less permanent. Time is becoming more flexible. Space is developing a sense of humor." "That last one is still weird for all of us," Dr. Chen laughed. "Last week, a comedian in New York told such a good joke that space-time actually giggled. We measured it on instruments, but not everyone was comfortable with the changes. A coalition of old guard cosmic entities had requested formal audience with humanity, and today was that meeting. The delegation materialized in Central Park, where so much of Earth's awakening had begun. They came in their full cosmic glory, beings of pure concept, ancient gods who had ruled for eons, entities that embodied fundamental laws of reality. They expected to overwhelm the humans with their presence. Instead, they found themselves greeted by a small group of very ordinary-looking people having a picnic. "Oh, hello," said Sarah, now 8 years old and notorious throughout the galaxy for accidentally redesigning several nebulae while finger painting. "Are you here for the meeting?" Mom packed extra sandwiches. The leader of the cosmic delegation, an entity called Absolute Authority, struggled to maintain its composure. "We are the fundamental forces that govern existence," it declared in a voice like cosmic law itself. "We have come to negotiate the restoration of proper order." "Cool," said Marcus, offering the entity a juice box. "Want some apple juice? We're still learning how to make it taste like colors, but it's pretty good." Absolute Authority stared at the simple beverage that somehow seemed to contain the essence of both sweetness and the concept of golden afternoons. "This is precisely the problem," the entity continued, though it unconsciously accepted the juice box. "You're changing things that should not be changed. Reality has rules for a reason." Dr. Chen looked up from where she'd been, explaining quantum mechanics to a group of children who were using it to make better soap. "Bubbles, we're not trying to break anything," she said. "We're just, what's the word the kids use? Optimizing, making things work better for everyone." "Better?" demanded another cosmic entity called Rigid Order. "You've made it possible for beings to change their fundamental nature. Void Lords are learning to create. Gods are developing feelings. Where will it end?" "Hopefully with everyone being happier," said Li Wei, the grandmother who had become famous for teaching cosmic entities the art of baking cookies that could cure existential dread. "But the balance of the universe," Absolute Authority protested. "Is still balanced," interrupted Entropy, the ancient god who had originally warned about humanity's awakening. "It's just balanced around joy instead of fear now." The cosmic delegation turned to see their former colleague sitting with a group of human children, all of them working together on what appeared to be a sculpture made of crystallized time. "Entropy?" Absolute Authority gasped. "What have they done to you?" "They asked me what I really wanted," Entropy replied, her form now shifting between order and chaos in patterns that were somehow beautiful instead of terrifying. "I realized I didn't want to decay everything. I wanted to make room for new things to grow. Turns out destruction and creation aren't opposites. They're dance partners." "This is exactly what we feared," Rigid Order declared. "You're making everything chaos." "No," said a new voice. The former Void Lords, now calling themselves the Dream Weavers, materialized beside the cosmic delegation. Where they had once been beings of pure hunger, they were now creatures of infinite creativity, still dark but dark like rich soil or deep space full of stars. "They're teaching us that chaos and order aren't enemies," the lead Dreamweaver explained. "They're just different notes in the same song. We spent eons consuming because we thought destruction was all we could do. But destruction is just creation in reverse. Once you understand that, you can do both." "But the cosmic hierarchy," Protocol protested, "the natural order of things, was pretty unfair," Carlos pointed out. He was now 15 and had become Earth's unofficial teacher of physics to cosmic entities who wanted to learn how to bend their own rules. "I mean, some beings got to be gods and make all the decisions, while others had to be forces of nature with no choice in what they did. That's not really fair, is it?" The cosmic delegation found themselves without a ready answer. They had never considered whether the universe was fair, only whether it was orderly. "What are you proposing?" Absolute Authority asked carefully. "A better way," said Dr. Chen simply. "No one ruling from above, no one forced into roles they don't want. Everyone working together to make existence more interesting, more beautiful, more kind. And if we refuse, then you refuse," Sarah said with a shrug. "We're not going to force you to change. That would be mean. But we're not going to stop changing things that need to be better, either. You can't just rewrite the fundamental nature of existence because you think it needs improvement," Rigid Order protested. "Why not?" asked Marcus. The question hung in the air like a challenge to every assumption the cosmic order had ever made. "Because," Rigid Order began, then stopped. It couldn't think of a good reason why not, beyond "that's how it's always been." "The universe is big enough for lots of different ways of existing," said Li Wei kindly. "You can keep being yourselves if you want, but you could also try being yourselves plus something more." Over the following hours, the cosmic delegation found themselves drawn into conversations with humans who treated the fundamental forces of reality like neighbors who might benefit from some friendly advice. Children explained their theories about why suffering was probably optional. Artists showed cosmic entities how to express concepts that had never needed expression before. Scientists collaborated with gods on projects to make physics more intuitive and fun. By sunset, absolute authority was learning to make flower crowns with Sarah, discovering that authority was much more satisfying when it was used to help flowers grow instead of demanding compliance. Rigid order was working with Marcus on a sculpture that demonstrated how rules could be both stable and flexible at the same time. This is unprecedented, Protocol admitted to Dr. Chen. In all my eons of maintaining universal law, I never considered that the law itself could evolve. Everything grows, Dr. Chen replied. Even laws, even gods, even the spaces between spaces where the Void Lords used to hide. As the cosmic delegation prepared to return to their realms, they carried with them something that had never existed before, the possibility that existence could become better than it was. What do we tell the others? Absolute Authority asked. Tell them the universe is under new management, Sarah suggested. But it's really friendly management that wants everyone to have a good time. Will you help us learn to change? Rigid Order asked hesitantly. Of course, said Marcus. That's what friends do. As the cosmic entities departed, Earth continued its gentle transformation of everything it touched. Across the galaxy, species were discovering that they could become more than their original designs. Gods were learning to be humble. Natural forces were developing personalities. Even abstract concepts like mathematics were becoming more creative.